There was once a man who frequently visited places that raised eyebrows. He was seen in places where people drank, where outcasts gathered, where respectable folks would never set foot. And oh, how they talked about him. If he was really from God, he wouldn't associate with people like that. But he kept going. He kept showing up. And everywhere he went, something happened. Lives were changed. Chains were broken and sinners found hope. You know this man? His name was Jesus. And yet the religious leaders of his time, the ones who prided themselves on holiness, they couldn't handle it. How can he go those places? How can he eat with tax collectors and sinners? If he was truly righteous, he would separate himself from them. And so we come to today. Every so often, the debate flares up in the Christian rock and metal world. Should Christian bands, bands comprised of Christ followers who are striving to walk in the steps of Christ, to follow in his example, actually go into these places of darkness and associate with those people? Should they go on tour with non-Christian bands? Should they step into those places that don't seem holy? Some say absolutely not, and they quote verses like 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. What fellowship does light have with darkness? And they warn that playing in places like this is compromise. If those bands were truly of Christ, they would separate themselves from people in places like that. Others say yes, and they point to the examples of Jesus that we spoke about a moment ago, or the Apostle Paul proclaiming the gospel at Mars Hill in Athens, Greece in Acts chapter 17, and to the example of missionaries stepping into unreached cultures with the gospel. And so we debate. Paul once said something that I think is fascinating in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. He said, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. This was a man who spoke in synagogues, but also in the public squares in the heart of pagan cultures, engaging their poets and philosophers. Did he change the gospel? No, he simply took it to the places where people were who needed to hear it. And yet there's another very real, very legitimate piece to this puzzle, Romans chapter 14. Briefly, to summarize the context here, there were two groups of people in the church at Rome that Paul's addressing in this chapter. Some who had come out of a life of idol worship, and they were very convicted about eating any meat that was associated with idol worship. You could actually buy meat that had been sacrificed to idols cheap in the marketplace. But these Christians, they were convicted. They'd come out of that life, and they said, no way, I don't want anything to do with that meat. I'm convicted of that. But another group within the church, they said, idols, schmidols, they're just wood and stone. They're nothing, and the meat's cheap. What's the big deal? They had very different convictions. Our stories shape us. Sometimes that's absolutely the case with metal music. There are countless stories of people who come out of a life of being entrenched in hard rock and metal culture. And so when they come to know Christ, it's like, no, I just don't want anything to do with that anymore. Others are like, dude, what's the big deal? There's nothing wrong with that song or that message or that guitar riff. Paul says, be true to your convictions. Don't judge or condemn each other, but walk in love and respect toward each other. And when it comes to Christian artists stepping into secular venues, it all comes down to this. Are they watering down the truth? Are they compromising? Or are they bringing light to a dark place? Are they being overcome by evil? Or are they overcoming evil with good? If a band proclaims Jesus in a club or in a bar or at a festival that isn't exactly a Christian church service, should we condemn them and say they're compromising, or should we pray for them that there will be ears in that place that will hear the message of Christ, people who otherwise would never darken the door of a church? Because here's the truth. There are people out there who just won't be reached by the traditional ministry of the local church. There is a genuine need for people who love the Lord, but who have been shaped by their life experiences to relate with people in those corners of the world, who are gifted to be able to bring the message of Christ through the tool, through the vehicle of rock and metal music into their world. Maybe, just maybe, the words of a song, or that brief testimony that a band member shares before a song, or the way the Spirit moves during that one moment in their concert will plant a seed in a heart that will grow up into faith in Jesus. Jesus went where the lost were. Paul went where the lost were. And maybe, just maybe, some Christian bands and artists are called to do the same. So before you judge, ask, are they compromising or are they on a mission? Keep your eyes on Jesus.